Hi, my name's Dave Howe, and I'm really excited about teaching you this class. Now, how many of you would be excited about listening to a class that started out like that? What we want to do in this particular session is to train you on a method called the IPEAR method, so that you can learn a structure and a format on not only how to engage the kids, but to give them some very good teaching in a very short, concise way during songs and during memory verses. And when it comes down to it, you got to realize it's all about presentation. So IPEAR, I-P-E-A-R, stands for Introduction, Presentation, Explanation, Application, and Repetition. So what I want to do is take a few moments and just go through what each one means and kind of the details of what that looks like. So we start with introduction. An introduction is something that is kind of fun and exciting, and it's really designed to engage and get the attention of the kids quickly. It only takes about 3 seconds to lose their attention, so you want to make sure that in your introduction it's fun, exciting. And the way that you can do that is tell a fun story, tell an enjoyable story, something that's relatable to the kids, or even just ask questions. But whatever it is, you got to have some enthusiasm and excitement with it so that the kids get their attention. And then that introduction also has to actually lead them into where you're going with the song or the memory verse. What is the song about? What is the memory verse trying to teach you? So you want your introduction to be something that ties into all of that. And so when you look at the IPEAR, the explanation and application also has to tie in with what your introduction is. And we're going to get into showing you those when we do the actual demonstrations for songs and memory verse. So that's your introduction, something that's really fun, gets their attention really quickly, but also helps focus them a little bit toward where you want to go in the teaching part with the song and the memory verse. Presentation. This is pretty simple. It simply is just basically presenting what you're doing. If you're doing a song, you sing the song. If you're doing a memory verse, then you do some other things in the part of presenting that. But it's just simply presenting what you're going to do. And then there's details that go along with that as well. The next is explanation. And this is one of the things that you have to be careful with. You're already going to have a Bible lesson. You're already going to have a missionary story. So you want your explanations to be very short and concise, and you want it to tie into the introduction as well as the application. So taking time to explain a couple concepts. And we always have fun with the teenagers. We say two, just do two, okay? And in case you didn't get it, just do two, all right? So taking time to explain a couple concepts or words, and this needs to be very precise and short, like I said. And this should tie in with what your introduction was about, and then what you're about to give them with an application. So that's really what the explanation is about, whether you're taking time to explain a word or two, or just a concept or two that's in that song or that memory verse. Application. Now this is where it gets kind of interesting. In your VBS, there's probably going to be a mixture of kids that are lost and kids that are saved. And the reality is if you try to teach them as if they're all lost or if they're all saved, you're doing a disservice to either group, one group or the other. So we actually like to apply basically what we're trying to teach them to a lost child and then to a saved child. And it should once again tie into the introduction and the explanation that you just gave. So when you're applying something, the story that you used for introduction and then the explanation point that you did, now you're applying that specific thing to a lost child as well as a saved child. And I'm going to get into more detail on that when I actually give a lesson on the song and memory verse part of it. But once again, it's keeping it short and simple. You don't want to teach them a whole nother lesson. And then the last one, the R, is repetition. And so when it comes to repetition, with a song it's real easy. You're just repeating and singing the song again. With a memory verse, you're actually doing things that will help them to remember it. So we call them repetitions. So it's a fun and enjoyable way of learning. So once again, you're looking at 4 things, or 5 things: introduction, presentation, explanation, application, repetition. Now, it's really important that when you start doing this IPEAR, that there's some tips that go along with this that are very, very critical for you. The first one is what most people really have a hard time with, is that you should practice it out loud. The reality is what you think you know up here doesn't really come out the way you think you know it sometimes. So by talking out loud, it helps you understand that you're prepared to do that IPEAR. And even though these aren't too difficult to do, it's still really important to practice them out loud, because if you hesitate or if you stumble or you're trying to wait for figuring out what you're going to do next because you didn't practice it, then you're going to lose those attention on kids. So it's really important to practice this so that you can flow from the introduction, presentation, explanation, application, and repetition. Be creative in your introductions. Don't just take a simple way. Sometimes be a little more creative. Think about what are some things that would really catch the kids' attention. What's a question that might do that? Or what's an experience that you've had that the kids would want to pay attention to because you're relating it to something in your life? So there's a lot of things that you can do that way in being creative. The other thing is being really enthusiastic. Enthusiastic is key when it comes to kids so that they know that you care about them. Your enthusiasm really tells the message that you care about who they are. And then the last thing is when you're putting them together, you don't want to just go from the introduction into a presentation and without any kind of link to it. So one of the things that we'll be talking about as I get into the specific things about songs and memory verses, that you want it to be smooth. Okay, so when you go from your introduction into your presentation, you can say, instead of saying, okay, now we're going to sing a song, do something that brings out what that song is about. Something like maybe you've introduced the song Turn Around and how God wants us to turn around our life, and this song talks about that. So you're making a good link between the two different things that are there. And remember, it's all about presentation. Man, if you don't do a good introduction to get their attention, it's going to be really hard to keep it after that. But then you got to go into that presenting what you're going to do. Take a moment, a short moment to explain, not another whole lesson, but just a couple of things very quickly that help them understand something about that song or that verse that you want to. And then apply those particular things, so a lost child to a saved child, and then go in and do the repetition, whether it's singing the song or the memory verse activities that we have. So remember, it's all about presentation.